Welcome to the Higher Ed Jobs Podcast. I'm Andy Hibble, the Chief Operating Officer, one of the co-founders of Higher Ed Jobs.
And I'm Kelly Sherwin, the Director of Editorial Strategy. Today we're talking with Mark Coldren about strategic career decisions. Mark is a leadership and engagement specialist with CUPA-HR and is a retired Associate Vice President for Human Resources at the University at Buffalo and held previous senior roles at Ithaca College and Syracuse University. And for those of you who aren't familiar, CUPA-HR stands for the College and University Professional Association for Human Resources. Thanks, Mark, for joining us today. We're so glad to have you here.
My pleasure to be here, Kelly.
So today we're going to start with a listener question asking advice on how to make strategic career moves as they consider their long-term growth. So Mark, here is the question for today. I began a position 5 months ago in enrollment management at my university after completing my master's degree at the same institution. As I think about my longer-term career growth, how do I go about looking for other opportunities at my current institution while maintaining strong relationships and not burning bridges? Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's interesting. I think people make a commitment to working someplace, especially when they get an educational benefit, and you feel like I owe them, right? Some people have called it kind of I've heard people use the term golden handcuffs. You know, you provided this resource, now do I owe you to stay where I am? I think this starts with how you're interested in your career trajectory, which means you may reach out, or not reach out, but have ongoing conversations with your supervisor about what you see next. And so some people, that's an easier task than others, because whether you have a good conversation or you have a good relationship with your supervisor. The other thing I would ask is take a look at your current job. And as you read the job description, do you see it as constant growth, or you see it as a job of, this is what I signed on for when I started my master's a few years ago, I'm ready for something else? I think a combination of those two could help somebody think a little bit more about, what do I do next? Or what, do I start to look at open jobs, or do I start to talk to others around me?
So following up on that, in terms of like looking for opening jobs, what is kind of I know it differs for every institution. You know, if this person right now is in enrollment management, to your point, maybe they looked at their job description and they're like, I just don't think this is what I want to do. Maybe I want to try working in, the student affairs. Do they go to HR and apply as a internal candidate? Do they network? Do they, like you said, talk to their current supervisor? Like, how do they navigate this kind of delicate situation in a way? Because like they said, they don't want to burn any bridges.
Yeah, I think the important element is, if you're looking to change a particular profession on a campus, a set of work, if you wait till postings come up, in some ways, if it's something different and you apply, many may not see you as a viable candidate, only because they don't see your previous experiences or your current one, say, for example, in enrollment management, preparing you for that job. I encourage people to kind of start to look at other areas that interest you. For example, as you mentioned, if it's student affairs, I think it's reaching out in that division and finding somebody that you could potentially go out and have a cup of coffee and say, tell me a little bit more about what you do. And the first reaction somebody might say is, hey, I don't have a job right now. And you're, oh, no, I understand that. I'm just trying to look at where a potential match could be with skills I have, competencies I'd have, and other areas that I want to move into. The one caution could be is, if you're a little bit further in, say, again, in this example of enrollment management, it's not a lateral. It almost feels like a step backwards in terms of entry level into a different part of the university. Be careful of that, because if you do, you may have to take a lower job level, maybe even sacrifice a little bit in salary, and that's not always an easy thing to do. I think one of the best transitions on a university, or a college or university, is moving into an administrative role. It could be anything, even though you're specific. So it could be a coordinator type of position. It could be working on projects that have something to do with that. But be wary that if they see a career build, that may be harder for you to make a lateral or a transition.
Mark, I think that's so important to kind of just talk about the X's and O's of switching between departments. And also, I can't stress enough, you probably shouldn't be waiting until a position is posted. But I think one of the common I think, pitfalls and traps that people fall into is they have a philosophy that the employee's perception is the employer's reality. And I think that's inside out. I think it's the employer's reality needs to be the employee's, or excuse me, the employer's perception needs to be the employee's reality. How your employer perceives the situation is really, really important as to how you go about it. No matter how good or good reasons or well-intended it may be in your request or desire, you need to really think long and hard about how the employer is going to see that and perceive it. Maybe you're completely justified, but if the employer is not going to see that, it's kind of a fool's mission to go for it. And let me be more specific here. And I think this is just a fantastic question because we can go at it from so many different perceptions. But you're in the position for 5 months. At any position, in my opinion, the best way to sell yourself for your next position is to prove yourself in your current position. If you've been somewhere in that position, and particularly in what sounds like a entry-level administrative role, give yourself a year and a half. And if they're not having conversations with you, then I think it's appropriate then to have those conversations with them when the organic time comes up. That could be many different ways that could be organically. But to have that conversation too soon, even if you're performing well, 5 months, they think they just hired you. The debt you may see for you is the debt for your education. The debt they see that you're paying off is they've just gone through a process, trained you, and gotten you to a place here. The last thing they want to do is replace you or have to find some other opportunity for you in order to keep you happy. Your reality is, if you're good, and this is a reality, 2 to 3 years, they're going to be worried that you're going to go someplace else if they don't give you that opportunity. Or if they're not perceiving that as their reality, that's also something for you to evaluate at that point. But the idea that I think people have is like, well, I need to move up. I want to go up. I get all that, but you have this great opportunity to prove yourself. Prove yourself and wait for the right opportunity. You don't get to ask this question multiple times without creating an issue in the relationship if you're really, really concerned about burning bridges.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Andy. I think there are a couple of key things you said. One is knowing the life cycle of the job you're in. So if it's enrollment management 5 months in, you have to look at the entire cycle of what happens during the course of an institution's year. And that's a very important context to show how well you do. And to your point, to demonstrate that you have really done well, been effective, and are constantly looking to grow and to learn. I think the other part about, besides knowing the cycle of when you bring this up, it is going from the perspective you said, from let's start with your boss and say, they just brought me on. And for me to bring it up that soon, I think they're going to look and say, well, wait a minute, you saw this as a stepping stone. That's not why I hired you. That's why it's going to take a little time of conversations of how that gets played out between you and your supervisor, because I think they'll see this as, wait a minute, you're not being, I guess for lack of better terms, you're not being grateful that we gave you this opportunity. And always remember that most departments don't see their job is to get you ready to move on to something else. I wish they did. I wish that supervisors embraced the fact that I'm here to develop you over a period of time. Instead, I think they look at it as, oh my goodness, it took me so long to find you. I want you. And now how could you leave me? You'd leave me in a lurch, and let alone me care about where you're going. So I think you're spot on, Andy. I think it is knowing the life cycle. 5 months is probably a little too soon, but you could open a conversation and say, I'm interested in growth. What would that look like?
I'm going to echo what you just said, but I can't agree with you more, particularly on that point of most supervisors don't see it as their responsibility to do this for you. I would agree with that. Now, if we were flipping this podcast and the questions about, I'm a supervisor and I'm wanting to retain excellent employees, this should be the first go-to move you have. You should be concerned about retaining good talent this way. This is how you do it. And if somebody is, particularly at this level, served the appropriate period of time in this role, they're going to get presented with other opportunities. Their work is going to distinguish themselves, and their experience is going to be valued at other institutions. And particularly at this stage of a career, they're much more mobile than a mid-career professional to go wherever to do it. So paying attention to that, if you're on the other side of this, you need to be sensitive to that if you really want to retain. Don't be surprised that they leave you after a period of time if you've just paid no attention to this.
Yeah, and the other thing is this notion of if you're surprised when someone comes to you that, hey, I've got a job offer, I think then you didn't, as the supervisor, get to know your folks well enough to know that's super important to them, that they are in a career growth trajectory. You need to be anticipatory about that as a supervisor. And I think many are just dumbfounded when someone comes and says, I got a job offer. And then they run and say, maybe I should counteroffer, whatever. Okay, but the money might help them, but that's not the reason they got recruited. It's because they're good. And you should know the folks you have who are attractive in the market.
Mark, it's been a fantastic conversation. We appreciate you joining us so much today, and we hope this listener and everyone listening finds some useful information in our conversation today. So thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure, Kelly. Great talking with you, Andy.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you all for listening. If you have any questions or thoughts about this podcast or questions for Mark, please feel free to email us at podcast@higheredjobs.com, or feel free to send us a direct message on X @higheredcareers. Thank you for listening and joining us today, and we look forward to talking with you again real soon.